Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So today is the day when we are going to start the 13th session of our Bhagavad Gita Gita Essence series. So on behalf of Evolve Pune team, I welcome all of you for this session. In the yesterday's session, which was on the chapter 12, Devotional Service, the Bhakti Yoga chapter, His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhuji talked on the practices which are required for Bhakti Yoga in detail. And now we are going to move towards the chapter 13 of our Gita Essence series. And this Gita Essence series, as we all are aware, that these are based on the teachings of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ji, who was the founder Acharya of ISKCON. So now, without any further delay, I request Madan Sundar Prabhuji to take over the session and take us through the chapter 13 of our Gita Essence series.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mother Dipasha. Hare Krishna. We welcome you all for today evening's session. So we'll start our session with the prayers. And then, as Mother Dipasha announced, we'll be starting with the third section of Bhagavad Gita, titled as Jnana Yoga section. And we'll be discussing the first chapter in it. That is the 13th chapter. So before that, let us offer a prayer.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm not able to see you. I don't know about others.
Yeah, there's a little bit of technical glitch, so team is trying to fix it. We'll start with the prayers at least.
Ji, Prabhuji.
Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatai Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome you all once again for today evening program. We are in the last phase of this Gita Essence program, and we'll be starting with our discussion today from chapter 13. Can we just close? A little slightly cold. So, chapter 13, titled as Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. The final 6 chapters focus on jnana, not regular, any ordinary jnana, but transcendental wisdom, which helps one to become detached from materialistic aspirations and become simultaneously attached with the spiritual goal and ultimately to Krishna. This chapter and the follow-up chapters covers or discusses the topics which have been already spoken about or discussed by Lord Shri Krishna previously. However, Lord Shri Krishna would now discuss about more analytical discussion of those topics which Krishna have already introduced in the previous chapters. And why Krishna is doing so? The whole idea is this discussion would help listeners and readers strengthen their conviction and deepen their understanding of life. That's the whole idea of this Jnana Yoga section. So to begin with, the acronym for chapter 13 is WISE. And to give you a little one-line introduction to this chapter, although this chapter only has 35 verses, but this is one of the most difficult chapters to fathom or to understand. And I would definitely encourage all of you to read it by yourself just to get the sense of the subject matter. This chapter begins with Arjuna's questions, where Arjuna put forward 6 questions to the Lord. And Arjuna says, this is 13th chapter, verse number 1, where Arjuna says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetrajnam Cha Etat Veditum Ichhami Jnanam Gneyam Cha Keshava. Here Arjuna says, my dear Lord, Etad Veditum Ichhami. I am Ichhami, my desire. I am eager to know about the following things. Like what? Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Second, what is Purusha? Third, what is Kshetra? Fourth, what is Kshetrajna? Fifth, Jnanam. And sixth, subject or the question or the object about which Arjuna wants to inquire is Gneyam. The 6 subject matters which Arjuna is asking here forms the essence of Vedic literatures, all Vedic scriptures. Please know, right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita introduction, we had established that Bhagavad Gita is called as Gita Upanishad, which means this is the essence of all the Upanishads. And this particular chapter brings out or highlights the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. In other words, these are the prominent subject matters of Vedic scriptures, and it's not an easy subject matter to fathom. But thanks to Arjuna, he asked this question, and Lord Shri Krishna, who is the creator, the original compiler of the Vedas, the one who gave the Vedic scriptures, one who knows Vedic scriptures completely, that Lord Shri Krishna would give us the gist or the essence of these 6 questions. So these are the 6 questions that Arjuna asked. It's up on your slide for your reference. And Lord Shri Krishna would take the whole chapter, the remaining verses, 34 verses, to help Arjuna understand these subject matters. So once again, these are the key constituents of Vedic philosophy, a very, very important subject matter. Although Arjuna knows the subject matter, he is an established transcendentalist, but more or less he's asking such a question just for the sake of all of us. People, those who are supposed to come in Kali Yuga at that point of time when Arjuna asked, so that they may not have the time, they do not have the interest, may not have the required skill set to study Shastras. If they study Bhagavad Gita, they have understood everything. So, Lord Shri Krishna begins to give the answer from the verse number 2. I will not go much in verses today because it's a subject matter in discuss. It has quite a few things to talk about today. So I'll focus right on the content, what we need to talk about. So let's take a look at the very first thing, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, which Arjuna asked. My dear Lord, what is Kshetra and what is Kshetrajna? Kshetra refers to field of activity, that is the body. I shall explain you in a short while. Kshetragya, Gnya means the knower of Kshetra. So who is the knower of the Kshetra? Is the Atma. However, Krishna says, no, there is not one knower, there are two knowers, the Atma as well as Paramatma. And then Krishna answers the third question of Arjuna, Jnana. What is Jnana? Knowledge means to understand what is Kshetra and Kshetragya. So this is the essence of the subject from the third verse purport. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the super soul is known in terms of Vedic literature as Jnana. Without making it more complicated, let me help you understand what is Kshetra and Kshetragya and Atma and Paramatma. Just like a farmer, he sows the seeds in an agricultural land. After a while, the seed fructifies into a plant or into a tree or a crop, whatever it is. The farmer knows very well about the limits, about the length and the breadth of his agricultural land. He doesn't know about what the other people have sowed into other lands and all that. Similarly, this body is considered to this agricultural land where the Atma or the living entity sows the seeds of karma. And this is the place where he gets the fruits of his karma. In other words, karma is performed by this body. In terms of the material nature, engages this body to perform action. So this is what is called as Kshetra. Now Kshetragya are two types. One type of Kshetragya is Atma and the second Kshetragya is Paramatma. So what is the difference between Atma and Paramatma? Just like the villager or the farmer knows about his agricultural land, but he doesn't know about other agricultural land. Whereas the king, he is ultimately the controller of all the lands. He knows about all the lands. Similarly, Paramatma, who is the source of all, knows about what a living entity is sowing the seed, what kind of actions being performed by different living entities. But individual living entity only knows about oneself. That's the whole point of difference between Paramatma and Atma. So Paramatma is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, whereas Atma is localized, knows only about that particular body in which the Atma resides. That's the whole point. Atma, Kshetra, Kshetragya, and between Atma and Paramatma. Ahead, Lord Shri Krishna speaks in details about this 24 material elements. This is called as Sankhya Yoga, where an analytical study of this material nature is done. And Lord Shri Krishna talks about this whole material nature comprises of these 24 elements, where there are gross elements 5, that is earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then there is 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch. There are 5 working senses. Then there are 5 sense objects. Like this, there are 24 elements, including, the soul, which is considered to be the 24th element. So I'm not going to go into the discussion, the details of the subject matter. This is just Krishna introduces it here. Whereas this subject matter we might elaborate in the next program, which we might start in 2021, where we'll have a detailed discussion on this. However, you all are encouraged to read from text number 4 to text number 7, wherein Lord Shri Krishna talks about this 24 elements. So when Arjuna heard all this thing about Kshetra and Kshetragya, then Arjuna began to ponder. And Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, how do I cultivate this knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragya? Knowledge means to know Kshetra, body, soul, and super soul. But generally it is seen that people are so entangled in bodily consciousness that it is very difficult for them to see themselves to be different than the body. So Arjuna is asking, my dear Lord, theoretical knowledge is not enough. How do I realize that I'm different from this body is what is the question. So for this, Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak from verse number 8 to 12, which is the second section of this 13th chapter. Krishna begins to speak and what is called as items of knowledge from verse number 8 to 12. So What is knowledge? Mother Dipasha, is a poll created? If you can pull out, in case if there is a poll. So, what is knowledge? Knowledge is about gaining information. Knowledge is about memorizing. Do we have a poll?
No, Prabhuji, it's not available.
Okay, fine. So, knowledge. What is knowledge about? Is it about? I'm just going to give you 4 options. You can write whatever you think, or maybe it will be a little difficult, so we can skip it. Let's proceed ahead. So, what is knowledge?
Okay, I'll type
Generally,
it in the chat.
sorry.
You may tell those options. I'll type it in the chat, and then people may answer it if you want.
So, okay, let's take a look. Is knowledge about gaining information? Maybe Mother Dipash, you can write on these 4 options into the chat so people would have it visible with them. Is knowledge about memorization? Is knowledge about good character and practical behavior, or all of the above? So, what is knowledge all about? So, a lot of people think knowledge is about memorizing, knowledge is about gaining knowledge. Maybe some may think knowledge is about cultivating good character and practical behavior. Let's see what scripture teaches us. What is knowledge all about? Knowledge is not only about information and memorization, but rather about exemplary personal character and practical behavior. Imagine there is a person who knows how to fly a rocket, but what is the use if the person doesn't know how to cook even a chapati for himself or herself? I mean, you can fly a rocket, but that's not essential for you to survive. What is required for sustenance is at least to know how to, just to manage basic needs of the life. So I see many are saying all of the above. No, not all of the above. It is very clearly mentioned, knowledge is about cultivating exemplary personal character and practical behavior. Now, our answer of all of the above in context of how the modern education have trained us. We'll come back to it in a short while. To give you an example, what is knowledge all about? And then you tell me if you are able to change your answer now or not. Hare Krishna. Can I continue, please? Yes. So, knowledge, to give you an example, you probably are aware of the Second World War, where Hitler had really caused a lot of havoc in the lives of many Jews and killed many Jews all around the world. So you're probably aware of the Nazis camp. So when America and Britain went over Germany and they defeated the Hitler's army and Hitler was shot dead by himself or not, whatever details. Point is, some of the Nazis camp, they were able to rescue some people from the camp. And some of the survivors, they really had to go through a long, prolonged shock because they saw the torture that their fellow members of the camp had to undergo under this Nazis' rule. One of the survivors in 1955, 10 years down the line, writes a letter, a very interesting content of the letter. And he is talking about the state of modern education. And he says, our modern education has deprived us of human values. The highly qualified doctors were performing severe experiments on the live captives in the Nazi camp. So there the doctors would do chemical testing and a lot of other testings, surgeries on the patients, not the patients, on the captives without anesthesia, and they were experimenting. They were doing all kind of medical experiments. And this person says, how can these be educated people? Because they were acting as humans, but actually they were trained up animals in the garb of humans. So our modern education has deprived people of their human values. Is this what was the concluding line of his from the letter? Is this what education meant to produce? Vicious animals in the garb of humans. In essence, knowledge is not about information. Knowledge is about transformation. That is what the focus of Vedic scriptures always. As we started Bhagavad Gita's journey, that Bhagavad Gita is about, the wisdom is about transformation. Not to just know we are different than the body. Not to just know the law of karma exists. Hiranyakashipu knew about this. What did he do? He was not transformed at all. He just knew the information, but he didn't realize it. That's the reason Arjuna is asking, my dear Lord, how do I realize? How do I cultivate this knowledge? Which means that can transform my consciousness. So who can understand Bhagavad Gita? Let's do a little analysis of caliber versus character. Success in academics depend on caliber, but not on character. Yes, somebody may have a great character, but if he doesn't perform well in the exam, he's not considered successful. He doesn't get rank accordingly. However, spiritual subject matters have very less to do with caliber. They have a lot to do with character. To give you an example, just like Lord Shri Krishna in 10th chapter 10th verse says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Krishna says, if you render devotional service unto me with affection, with love, I give you the intelligence by which you come back to me. To give you an example, or let me ask this question to you again, I guess they have missed out the poll here. Who can understand Bhagavad Gita? What do you think? I'll give you two options only. The option A, a drunkard PhD scholar, or maybe a matric fail boy, but with a great character. Who do you think can understand the message of Bhagavad Gita? Lord Shri Krishna chose Arjuna to teach the message of Bhagavad Gita not because he was a great warrior, not because he was son of Pandu, younger brother of Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was a disciple of Dronacharya, or maybe because he was husband of Draupadi, maybe because he was a father of Abhimanyu. No, not at all. Not at all. Arjuna was chosen by Lord Shri Krishna just because Arjuna was non-envious. That is the whole point here. So Krishna says, who develops a sincere desire to serve me, or to know me, I give him the intelligence so that he can come to me. A lot of time people have doubt on it. I'll give you one real life example. Few years ago, our devotees were distributing books in Russia. This is the month of December. This is Gita Jayanti month. So in this particular Gita Jayanti month, our devotees travel all over and they try to give the message of Bhagavad Gita or give out Bhagavad Gita. So there were some Russian devotees traveling in Russia and they came to a place, a small village, which was Muslim dominated. And they went and they stood at the corner of the street almost for a whole day. It was a very poor village and not even a single person came by to them or stopped by them to ask what they're doing, or whenever they tried talking to them, nobody talked to them. Right across the street, there were three ladies standing, wearing the burqa, the black colored dress as they wear in the Muslim nations. And after almost 6 or 7 hours of standing on the street, both the monks thought, there is no point. Nobody is interested. Nobody is listening to us. Let us walk away. And they decided to walk away back to the bus and drive to another village. As soon as they turned around and they were just walking away, suddenly one of the lady who was standing across the street wearing a burqa came running towards these two men and said, whatever she said, bhaiya, brother, whatever. And she said, I would like to have the book that you are carrying. So these brahmacharis were surprised. What book? What does she know what we are giving? And before even the monk can respond, she, underneath her burqa, she had a pouch of, whatever savings she had, a pouch of money, and she handed over to the monk. She said, I am a very poor lady. This is what all I have. This is all my savings. I hope this would be sufficient for the price of the book. Please give me the book. And then the monk opened his bag and took out a copy of Bhagavad Gita and gave her the copy of Bhagavad Gita. She was so happy. She took the book, put it on her chest. She began to cry. But the monk is totally surprised. What is happening to this lady? This is a Muslim town, and there's a Muslim lady wearing a burqa. She's holding a copy of Bhagavad Gita, putting onto her chest, and she's so emotional, becoming so emotional. So after a while, monk was stunned. What is this miracle going on? So then, when she became a little sober, then he asked her. He said, my dear ma'am, or my dear mother, how do you know about this book? Do you know anything about this book? Why did you ask for this book? Why did you call out my name? We never interacted. You never came by to us, ask us what we are doing, but you asked me for a book and I gave you the book, and holding this book, you are crying. What happened? You know what she said? Something very, very interesting and profound. She said, all my life I have believed in Allah. However, lately, from last some months or few weeks, I have been very intensely praying to the Lord, to my Allah, that my dear Lord, I want to know you more. Apart from your name, I have no idea of who you are. I want to develop a relationship with you. I want to serve you, but how do I do? I have no idea because we don't know anything about you. Please tell me something more about you. I want to see you. So she said, I was praying like this intensely for some time, and last night in my dream, I had the vision of Allah. Vision means the sound of Allah. I heard. She said, Allah appeared in the form of sound, and He told me that yes, tomorrow around this time, go to this corner of your corner of the street in your village, and you'll find two men wearing a saffron or red or orange color clothes, robes, and they will have a book. Please go and collect that copy of book from them. You read that book and you will get to know everything that you need to know about myself. It's amazing. And now this man was shocked. Our brahmacharis were shocked. Can you imagine? This book marathon and this whole service. So the point here is Tesham Satata Yuktanam. Now what was her qualification? She was not even educated probably. But she had intense desire, and that is what the whole point is. Who can understand Bhagavad Gita? This is just one among many stories about it. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once went on South India tour. There he saw one man holding a copy of Bhagavad Gita upside down. You see this? Upside down. He was holding a copy like this and he was looking at the book and he was crying. Srila Prabhupada went to that Brahmin and he said, Arey Baba, why are you crying? And by the way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, you're holding a book upside down. Looks like you can't even read. So that man said, yes, sir, I cannot read. I'm illiterate. Then why are you crying? My Guru Maharaj told me to read every day Bhagavad Gita, but because I don't know how to read, I always take the book in my hand and just keep it in front of me, just to follow the instruction of my Guru Maharaj. So, but why are you crying? And he said, I don't know anything what is given in Bhagavad Gita apart from what I heard from my Guru. But this photo, because this is what the onset of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna. He said, whenever I touch Bhagavad Gita, the vision of Krishna sitting on the seat of a charioteer and Arjuna ordering Krishna to take his chariot here and there, fills my heart with so much gratitude for the Lord, that how kind and compassionate is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that for his devotee he is willing to become their servant. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he heard this, his eyes swelled with tears and he embraced his Brahman and he said, you are more learned than the learned Brahmanas. There are learned Brahmanas who know 700 shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita. They can recite back to forth through back. But you are far much more learned because you have understood the message of Bhagavad Gita, which is Lord Shri Krishna's compassion and kindness and love towards all of us. So who can understand Bhagavad Gita? This man was illiterate. That woman in Russia, she was very poor, probably was illiterate herself. Yet they got the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. So the real method of acquiring spiritual knowledge is the cultivation of divine qualities, of which humility is foremost. And when we commit to spiritual lifestyle, then we simultaneously develop divine qualities. We already discussed on the subject matter previously that when a person takes to, just now, yesterday we discussed 12th chapter, and at the end of it, we saw the qualities of pure devotee. And one of the key messages of that was, one, Krishna is very attracted to the one who develops such qualities. Second, one who takes to Krishna consciousness naturally develops such qualities. That is that's a proof of the success, that's a proof that the transformation is happening. So when we commit to spiritual lifestyle, then we simultaneously develop divine qualities is the key point. And here in verse number 8 to 12, Lord Shri Krishna gives 20 items of knowledge. I would not have time to go into details of it because 13th chapter itself is a very elaborate discussion. I hope I could finish in time today, but please mark it for homework for yourself. Verse number 8 to 12, where you will find these 20 action items. And these are the qualities, or these are the essentials for an individual to cultivate transcendental knowledge. So I'll request our host, Mother Dipasha, if she can read out these items.
Yes, Prabhuji. So the 20 items of knowledge are humility, amanitvam, pridelessness, adambhi, adambhitvam, non-violence, ahimsa, tolerance, shanti, simplicity, arjavam.
So just to give you one example, of course you will read Prabhupada, but you'll find the details about it. Humility. What is the importance of humility? Or how do we cultivate humility? Let's put it this way. Let me give you an analogy. Tell me yes or no, makes sense or not. A tree which bears fruit is always bent low. Yes or no? Because of the weight of the fruits. A tree which does not bear fruit stands erect. Yes? Similarly, a person who has these qualities, a person who is having a good character, would naturally be humble. In other words, a person who has transcendental knowledge would necessarily be humble. To give an example, you want to really do a simple exercise of cultivating humility, take a whiteboard and draw a line. Now draw a line which is far bigger than the line that you drew. Obviously, the previous line, which was smaller, naturally would become smaller or humble. In other words, when a person actually cultivates transcendental knowledge, when he understands the glories of the Supreme Lord, he would naturally feel humble. This is not an inferiority complex. This is to understand that I am too small, insignificant. There is no question of competition with the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord is unlimited, and I am a very limited, tiny in front of the Supreme Lord. To do a little exercise at the end of the program today, please go into their balcony and look at the sky and think about it. What's our position in this whole creation? Just so one example of it, how we can cultivate humility by being in an association of a more qualified person, we naturally feel a sense of humility then. Other action items or items of knowledge like accepting spiritual master. This is one of the very important item of knowledge, because all the process of acquiring transcendental knowledge begins with practicing this, taking shelter of a bona fide guru. Other items of knowledge: maintaining cleanliness, both internal and external. Steadiness means determined to follow the rules of spiritual life. Self-control, not getting carried away. Renunciation of sense objects, not giving into sense pleasures. Absence of false ego, perceptions of evil, which means to understand the problems of life in this world in the context of janam, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. Detachment, these are the action items which we need to be cultivating. No entanglement, even mindedness. I'm just reading out, please bear with me. Can't go through the details of explanation. 16th action item, unalloyed devotional service. So according to scriptures, yesterday I quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto, Yasyasi bhaktir bhagavati akinchana. Let me try to quote another verse. This comes in Srimad Bhagavatam 1st canto. It says, Vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yoga prayojita janayati asu vairagyam jnanam chayat ahitukam. It says, one Vasudeva Bhagavati, one who renders devotional service unto Lord Vasudeva. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, one who engages in devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, Janayati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahitukam, naturally develops Vairagya and transcendental knowledge. Developing transcendental knowledge means becoming freed from all anarthas or cultivating all divine qualities. That's the point here. 19th, accepting the importance of self-realization. And 20th, search of absolute truth. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna speaks about this 20 items of knowledge. A little exercise, kind of a take-home exercise. You can note down this all 20 action items or items of knowledge, paste it onto your wall, and review them weekly or monthly. and see how you're cultivating them or how you're able to practice. This is something which we can see how you're progressing in spiritual life. So, like this, Lord Shri Krishna explains Arjuna how to cultivate jnana. Now, Krishna goes ahead, or Lord Shri Krishna speaks ahead about gnayam. What is the object of knowledge? And Lord Shri Krishna explains the object of knowledge is to understand Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this brings us to the third section of chapter 13. Soul and super soul. As I already kind of gave a disclaimer in the beginning of this discussion, the 13th chapter is one of the most difficult chapter because here the gist of all Vedic knowledge is given and it is not that easy to comprehend. So we'll see how we can try to present it. So I would still request you to read out Prabhupada translation and purport to get a gist of it. When you go through the Sanskrit of it, it's very complicated. I have tried many times and it's very difficult to fathom the differences between Atma and Paramatma. So first of all, understand what soul is. Of course, we have already discussed in the second chapter. I will not go into the details of it, but Krishna says, Anadi, Najayate, Mriyate, Va Kadachin, Nayam Bhutva Bhavitva Nabhya. So it's beginningless. Matparam, it is always under my shelter. It is shelter seeker. And it is beyond material cause and effect. So when one understands the features of soul, such a person naturally becomes soul or blissful. Now it is a subject matter realization, which is a gift of the Lord. What are the features of super soul? Now, what is the challenge here? Although it seems, because I'm trying to explain you, it seems very easy. The problem here, or the difficulty of this subject matter is, this is the place where transcendentalists get really confused when they study the 13th chapter. When they study the 13th chapter, the conclusion that most of the people draw is that Atma and Paramatma is one. They fail to comprehend these few verses which we are discussing right now in a probably very straightforward manner, but it's not like that when it is being described in Sanskrit. And that is where people feel, those who are based on their Sanskrit knowledge trying to interpret or understand Bhagavad Gita, their conclusion generally comes of impersonalism. The Lord does not exist. I am the Paramatma. I merge into the Brahman at the end of life. So that's how this chapter is the most debatable, controversial, or discussed among the scholars for this reason. So let's take a look at it. By the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we are at least able to comprehend it simply. So, features of super soul. Omnipotent. It accepts our offering. You know, Krishna says, offer we patana pushpa phalam toyam. So many times people think, does Krishna accept our offering if we make an offering to him? Yes, Krishna does. Actually, Krishna can eat from any of his senses. So how does he eat our offering? Through his eyes, through his vision. And by accepting our offering, the prasadam, the bhoga becomes spiritualized. To give an example, 500 years ago, there was a great devotee of the Lord by the name of Mukunda. He had a son by the name of Raghunandan. So once Mukunda had to go out of a village, and the mother of Raghunandan asked, Raghunandan, your father is not here. Why don't you make an offering to the Lord today? He, or the father of the family, worshipped Gopinath deity. Raghunandan, almost of the age of Sai Shastva, he went, carried the plate of offering, brought it in front of the Lord and kept it. And then he went out to play, to return back after half an hour. When he came out after half an hour, Raghunandan was surprised. Krishna has not eaten. All the bhoga is still on the plate. Raghunandan pleaded to the Lord, Gopinath, please eat. My mother would chastise me. Did I make a mistake in my offering? Why have you not eaten? He's a small boy. He doesn't know how Krishna eats. He thought Krishna is going to consume everything there on the plate. Raghunandan said, I'm leaving it for 5 more minutes, my dear Lord. Please take it. I'll come back. But this time you have to finish everything from the plate. Raghunandan went out, covered the altar, and came back again. Everything is still there as it is. Raghunandan began to cry. My dear Lord, why don't you eat? What did I do wrong? If my father would get to know how angry he would be at me that I could not serve you. And when Raghunandan began to cry like this, something really, really incredible happened. Gopinath deity walked down of the altar. climbed down of the altar and ate everything from the plate. And Raghunandan, while sitting there, saw Krishna eating everything. And he was so happy that finally Krishna have accepted it. And very blissfully, he brought an empty plate to his mother. And mother never expected this to happen. And he brought the plate to his mother, and mother asked, Raghunandan, where is all the prasadam? Mama, you told me that offer it to Gopinath. I offered to Gopinath and Gopinath ate. Now mother was amazed. Mother said, oh, our son has become naughty. He has either eaten everything by himself or fed his friends or the monkeys, and now he's saying Gopinath ate. Gopinath doesn't eat like this. Gopinath accepts through his eyes. He gives everything back to us. So mother didn't know to chastise or not to chastise, but she didn't believe. She said, I don't believe you. You're lying to me. So Raghunandan was in a fix. He said, what is going on? You told me to offer, I offered. Now you're complaining. So the mother said, well, you let your father come. Let your father make a decision on it. Father came back in the evening. Mother told everything to the father. The father said, okay, let's prepare another bhoga and let's ask our son Raghunandan to offer it again. I cannot believe that our son would lie. So, okay, mother prepared another set of bhoga, gave it to Raghunandan. Raghunandan went to the altar and he again offered. And now this time he said, Gopinath, they are blaming that I ate your bhoga. Please eat again so that they know that you ate bhoga first time. So now Gopinath has to eat again. Just said the given evidence that Gopinath ate before also. Now Gopinath is in a fix. What is going on? So Gopinath is not coming down the altar. Raghunandan began to cry again. Gopinath, 5 minutes have gone by. I have to prove my innocence. Please eat. Why are you not eating? Finally, Gopinath came down the altar and began to eat everything. But this time something interesting happened. The father of Raghunandan, Mukunda, was hiding behind the curtain and looking at what's everything happening. And when Mukunda saw, he thought, all my life I've been serving Gopinath. Not even once he blinked an eye at me. Look at the devotion of my son, that the deity form came down the altar and ate everything, and he went into an ecstasy that he fell on the ground. When he fell on the ground, there was such a loud noise. Raghunandan understood there is somebody, and of course Gopinath deity understood there is somebody. Gopinath went up onto the altar and stood there. And it is explained, this is still there in Bengal. There's a temple of Gopinath there at the house of Raghunandan or Mukunda. So Gopinath had eaten everything and he was eating the sweet in the end, which was a laddu, which was, at that point of time, Gopinath had eaten half. And when Mukundan crashed on the ground, Gopinath had only eaten half. So Gopinath left it onto the plate and went up onto the altar. That half laddu is still maintained and is kept when you go and take darshan of Gopinath deity, as an evidence that yes, Lord came and ate. These are many, many examples. I'm just giving one example just to sweeten up the subject matter of jnana, otherwise which becomes dry. Krishna hears to our prayers, omnipotent. Didn't he hear the prayer of Draupadi? So why wouldn't Lord hear to our prayer? Sees all our activities, law of karma. Krishna is the one who observes all the activities of all the living entities, and law of karma is there to give us the results like that. Krishna is all pervading. These are the features of the super soul which Krishna explains. All pervading, 11th chapter, the Vishwarup, Paramatma, or the Virat to be discussed already. Krishna is, or the Paramatma is transcendental. This means not affected by the dualities of this world. We cannot see him through our senses, beyond sense perception, and is undivided. Undivided means Krishna is a cause, or the Lord is a cause of the whole creation, yet he remains as he is. On an ordinary case, if a person has 10 rupees and if he gives 5 rupees note to somebody else, how much is left with? 5 rupees, isn't it? But even if Krishna gives 10 rupees, he still have 10 rupees. And therefore scripture says, this is the invocation mantra from Ishopanishad, where it is said, Om Poonam Madah Poonam Midam Poonat Poonam Mudachyate Poonasya Poonamadaya Poonameva Vashishyate. So, I'll not read the whole translation, which means Poonam, Poona, Poonat, Poona, Poonasya, Poonam, Poonam. You see, Poonam, Poonam, Poonam. In essence, The complete creation, the universes are manifesting from the Supreme Lord, yet He remains complete. He is never deprived or depleted of any of the resources. So that's the whole subject matter here. So, how to understand the object of knowledge? The object of knowledge is to understand the knowledge of Atma and to understand Super Soul. So, how do we understand this? How do we gain knowledge about the subject matter? And the answer is given. Of course, we have, Bhagavad Gita also mentions, but I'm quoting for this session, Srimad Bhagavatam particularly. And this is what Srimad Bhagavatam says. Somehow or other, if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, similarly as 4th chapter, 34th verse of Bhagavad Gita, then the entire mission of one's human life is fulfilled. Just like Srila Prabhupada, Abhay Charande, 21-year-old boy or man, when he met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1921 or 22 in Calcutta. Like that, Srila Prabhupada Abhay Charande later on went on to become Srila Prabhupada or Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It all begins with meeting with a bona fide guru and receiving his favor. I'll give you one modern day example. Modern day, just few years before. There was a medical conference in America where the top-notch doctors from all over the world have assembled and our book distributor. It was the time of December marathon. Our book distributors were there all over trying to, distribute Bhagavad Gita. And they went to this medical conference. They went to this medical conference and they met a Burmese doctor. He was from Burma, and Burma is more or less Buddhist nation. So our devotee told him, see, this is the direct instructions of Lord Buddha. Okay? This is called as Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Buddha. Buddha is one of the 10 incarnations. He said, this is the knowledge of Buddha. You are from a Buddhist nation, you should know it, you should read it. So that doctor immediately took this copy of Bhagavad Gita. However, never had a chance to read during the time of his stay in America, came to Burma. When he unpacked his bag, opened this book, and when he opened the book, he realized, this book is not in English. Unfortunately, this is in Hindi. Now, he didn't know Hindi, what to do? He kept it in his library, and after some time, he made some, friends in Burma who knew Hindi. They were actually natives of India, had shifted there or whatever was the story. So he thought, this book is lying here, is not of my use. Why don't I give this book to them? And he handed over this book, Bhagavad Gita, to his friends who knew Hindi. One of them read this book, Bhagavad Gita, and that is how our Hare Krishna movement or ISKCON was founded in Burma. On what basis? Not even a single devotee. Just one Indian who was staying there in Burma who knew Hindi, got a copy of Bhagavad Gita, he read Bhagavad Gita, became a devotee. He started telling others about Bhagavad Gita, the wisdom. He made others devotee. He started a center on his own. And then he contacted, and then the devotee got to know the rest of the ISKCON like that. Just imagine, just by the help of reading one Bhagavad Gita, not even meeting a sadhu, such is the impact of reading a bona fide authority, or reading a bona fide commentary, or meeting with a bona fide person. That's the whole idea. And with this, we come to the last section. So far we have seen the 4 prominent questions being asked. What is Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam and Gneyam? And now we come to the last 2 questions. What is Purusha and what is Prakriti? And this is where E stands for enjoy. Now every living entity in this world, in this material world, tries to control and enjoy matter. That is what the aim of every living entity. It is this enjoying spirit which binds us to this material world. And therefore, Chitraketu Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam makes a very beautiful statement. And Chitraketu Maharaj says, Samsara chakra etasmin jantur jnana mohitaha brahmayan sukham cha dukkham cha bhunkate sarvatra sarvada. Chitraketu Maharaj says, deluded by ignorance, the living entity wanders in the forest of this material world, enjoying the happiness and distress resulting from his past deeds, everywhere and at all times. In other words, happiness and suffering is already destined, which comes in our life at different times because of our past misdeeds. Yet a person believes that he is the enjoyer, he is the controller, and he decides his happiness or misery. But no, what all is happening is because of past misdeeds or the deeds. So who is the enjoyer? Let's take a quick look at it. Who is enjoyer? Now, when you talk about living entity is not an enjoyer, people wonder what's the difficulty? Why can't I be the supreme enjoyer? Well, I'll just give you 2 points to brief you on the subject. First, resources are limited. Ultimately, you cannot enjoy unlimitedly. Yes or no? And the reality check, because resources are limited and you have such a huge population, everyone trying to be the enjoyer, the controller, it will undoubtedly lead to unending competition and exploitation. Do we agree? Yes or no? So if you have unending competition, exploitation, rich becomes rich, poor becomes poor, how can everyone enjoy? Not possible. Second problem, the difficulty is cannot enjoy forever. Why? Because ultimately, how many things, how many gulab jamuns can you eat? You know, you can eat 5, 10, 15, 20. After that, ultimately it becomes boring. And after a few hours, then again we feel hungry and we want something more. Somebody has been aspiring to buy a brand new car. You get a brand new car. What's next? It's not that you're happy with that car. Then a person has another desire. So the journey of fulfilling desire is difficult. Getting a desire itself is okay for temporary real time. You get some happiness. Ultimately, after that, again, is very challenging. So that's the whole point. We cannot enjoy it forever. That's the reason it becomes very difficult. You right now, right behind me, you see a photo of a person who seems to be crying. He was a founder or CEO of world's famous phone company. His name is Steve Ballmer. He was a founder and CEO of Nokia, who lost the business by 2013. In 2013, he had to fire 25,000 employees. And during a press conference, this is a press conference when he was doing, when he broke down into tears, he had called for a press conference to announce that Nokia has been purchased by Microsoft only for $10 billion or lesser, whereas his market value earlier was $50 billion. The point here is Steve Ballmer makes a very interesting statement. He said, we never did anything wrong. We thought everything going to last like this forever. We would always be on the top number position in the mobile industry, but somehow we lost everything. That's the whole point. We can never be in the situation of enjoying forever. So how to really enjoy? Narad Muni gives a very beautiful answer. Narad Muni says, Yatha taror mulanishchanena trapayanti taskanda bujopashakha pranopaharachayatendriyana tathaiva sarvaranam achuttadechya. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Lord through devotional service automatically satisfies the devatas who are parts of that supreme personality of Godhead, and also all the living entities. This is the verdict of Narada Muni. So how do we really find happiness? In other words, there was a devotee in London, would always have a big smile on his face. So one day his manager asked him, yeah, I am your manager. I decide what would be your promotion. I decide what would be your bonus amount. I should be more happy because I decide what would be your salary. But I am never so happy. And I always see you to be smiling and happy. What's the reason? So this devotee said, well, I cannot tell you, express in these words. I would like to just show you what's the reason for my happiness. So he said, when the office ends today, why don't you come along with me? I'll take you to a place and I'll get you the experience of it. So boss said, yes, I want to know why you're so happy, always happy. And this devotee took the boss and brought him straight to the Soho Street temple, ISKCON temple, Radha Londoneshwar temple. He brought him right in front of the deities. He said, "See, sir, because I serve the deities, that's the reason of my happiness." And the manager was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to say, but at least he understood that he is a spiritualist or transcendentalist. And now he understood where does he get his strength or his sense of happiness. So that's a lot of people wonder outside why these people, devotees, are always so blissful. So in this concluding verses, we're going to talk about 6 quick questions. I have divided this section in 6 questions. This is the second question. I'm not going to go into details of it because we have already discussed why do bad things happen to good people. The reason of why bad thing happens to good people is all because of our own karma. So this is the whole essence, the gist of it. We had a whole dedicated session on it in Gita Wisdom. Prakriti, Purush and their union. So Krishna explains in 20th verse, both Prakriti and Jiva are eternal. And Purusha is only the Supreme Lord. But because the Jiva, we are trying to usurp the position of the Lord, that's the reason we continue to suffer distress or sometimes happiness in this world. So what is the purpose of material creation in essence? Just like if we have a smartphone, everything in this world has a purpose, right? So what is the purpose of this material creation? Scientists say it happened for randomly. There is no purpose, no cause for it. No, there is a purpose. And the purpose Krishna explains in the 20th verse. I created this material creation to give rebellious Jiva a chance to reform his behavior and return back to spiritual world. And this is what something we should always remember. Where are we? What are we supposed to do? We are supposed to reform our behavior, not to spoil our behavior further. In other words, this material world is compared to a university. Unless we pass the final exam, we will not get a certificate. And if you and I are sitting here today, which means we have not yet cleared the exam. We are still here and we have yet to clear the exam to graduate from this university and go back to Godhead. So the Jiva in this world, cause and effect are both handled by material nature. These are subject matter that requires more elaboration, but let me just give you a brief essence of it. There are a lot of people who talk about victim mentality. Have you heard of victim mentality? I've been victim of this and that. And this verse or 21st verse or 13th chapter, Krishna says, there is nothing like victim mentality. Because nothing happens by chance. Everything happens because there is a reason for it. Just like if somebody wakes up in the morning with a headache, there is a reason for it. Not because any reason he'll wake up with a headache. Just like we have a body, what is the cause of it? Kapila Muni says, Karamena Deva Netrena is because of past misdeeds or past actions we have got a body. Somebody gets a stomach ache. Is there a reason for it or just a random event? Is there a reason for it? So that's what Krishna tells in this very important verse, that every effect has a cause. And what is the actual cause? Krishna explains the actual cause is the desire of living entity, nothing else. And with this we come to the third question which is being raised in this particular series of verses. Where is my freedom? Do I really have freedom or not? Krishna says, no, there is no freedom. A living entity is always dependent, is influenced by material nature. And this verse becomes the subject matter for the 14th chapter. Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak on the 14th chapter, and this is the founding verse for the 14th chapter, where Krishna here just briefly tells every living entity is under the influence of the modes of material nature. And I would elaborate on the subject matter tomorrow. You see this puppeteers here? Puppets and puppeteers? So we are like puppets in the hands of the puppeteers. And these 3 ladies who you see in the picture are Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamogun. The Sattvagun is in the orange dress, Rajagun is in the red dress, and Tamogun is in the dark blue dress. And you see Krishna's picture on top of it? That indicates Lord Shri Krishna is the controller of all. And that is what Krishna says, no, Jiva, living entity is not independent. Jiva is always under the control of Prakriti or Ishvara, depending on whose shelter he takes. Krishna explains here about the function of super soul that Arjuna, I am the overseer, permitter and supreme enjoyer. Upadrashta anumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara. And this is the verse that becomes, which is actually the seed verse for our mind management course, where we are mostly going to start that in 2021. I will explain this verse in details in over 5 topics. So, are we the controller? Yes or no? Let me just give a very small example right now, and I'll jump to the concluding part of this 13th chapter. So, let me give this example to you in this way, and give me an answer on in the numerical form. So, do you think, are you 100% controller of your body? If yes, write down 100%. If you think 50-50, 50% is within my control, 50% I don't know how things happen with my body, you may write 50%. And 0% if you think no, body is not at all in my control. What do you think about it? Krishna says living entities at all times dependent on the Prakriti and on the Ishvara. So what do we think about it? Yes or no? How much control would you think you have on your body? People are writing 0%, really? I'll give you the medical figure, okay? I'll give you what the scientist says. Some are saying 50%. No, not 100% dependent. If you think you have 100% control, you are the controller. I decide to move my eyes, I move it. I decide to speak, I speak it. I decide to walk, I walk. I'm the controller. Where is Krishna? Where is Prakriti? Or if you think not at all, I'm fully dependent. Nothing happens without the help or without the mercy of the Lord. So very strange figures. You can give figures in between also. So according to modern science, we only have 5% control on our body. How much? 5%. You don't control the functions of the lungs, the livers, the heart beating. You're not responsible for the pumping of the blood, yes or no? And how your kidney functions, and yes. Even our breathing, and I'll conclude with this example on this section. You and I have been sitting together in front of each other for almost an hour now. We have taken so many breaths. Imagine if Krishna gives you the control of breathing. What will happen? According to medical science, they have termed this particular feature where a human being has to control his breath. They call it as Ondine's curse syndrome. Ondine was the name of the scientist who first dealt with such a case of a newly born child where he has to control his breathing. Now, what will happen if you have to control your breathing? If you have to control your breathing, you can never sleep, because if you sleep, how do you breathe? Yes or no? When you're fast asleep, still you are breathing. So how can we say we are actually controlling our body? So if we are not controlling the body, then who is controlling the body? Who makes sure the heart continues to pump blood 24 hours by 7? Imagine even for 5 seconds your heart revolts, says no more, I want to take a tea break. That probably would call as a heart attack. Isn't it? That's the whole point. Krishna makes it very clear. Arjuna, where is your control? Very limited. However, our experience of the world teaches as if we are the controller, but most of the things are beyond our control. Fourth subject is the 3 doers. I'll skip this discussion because we have already discussed this. The essence is there are not 1, 2, but 3 doers: Jiva, Paramatma, and Prakriti. Jiva only desires. Ishvara sanctions or rejects based on our past karmic credits. And when Ishvara sanctions, then Prakriti carries out the order. That is what was 3 doer concept. Then Arjuna began to ponder, my dear Lord, how would a common man understand this whole technical subject? It's really technical. We're trying to give you a little gist. How would a person understand this whole Jnana Yoga that you're explaining here? And that brings us to the 5th point. And Krishna says, Arjuna, practice bhakti. Bhakti will give you everything if you take to the simple process of devotional life. Take shelter of pure devotees. Hear from him about self-realization. Follow in his footsteps, and everything else will be revealed to you in due course of time. So hearing gives us knowledge, and knowledge gives us transcendental vision. Knowledge removes our vision of ajnanata, ignorance, and gives a transcendental vision. So the last point Lord Shri Krishna discusses in the 13th chapter is, what is the vision of transcendentalist? How does a transcendental sees? Krishna says, a transcendentalist, the true seer, can distinguish between spirit and matter. in all circumstances. He sees matter to be different than the spirit. The number written in front of it indicates the verse number. He is the actual seer who sees the soul and the supersoul both, and he understands it is the body that acts, not the Atma. And what are the activities of the soul? Krishna concludes the 13th chapter with the discussion on the activities of the soul. And Krishna says, the soul does nothing, nor does it mix with the body, but it does, however, illumine the body with consciousness. Therefore, when the Jivatma leaves the body loses lustre and the body becomes a dead matter. With this, we come to the conclusion of this very important but a little difficult subject matter, 13th chapter, which began with Arjuna asking 6 questions. 6 questions were as follows: Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, and Gneyam. And in essence, we saw here, Kshetra refers to body, Kshetrajna means the knower of the body, and there are 2 Kshetrajnas, soul and super soul. Jnanam refers to how to acquire knowledge, and Gneyam means the object of knowledge. Krishna says the object of knowledge is to know Atma and Paramatma. How to acquire knowledge? Krishna explains you have to cultivate character. It all depends on cultivating our character. Items of knowledge, where 20 items are mentioned, and the 2 foremost is first taking shelter of a bona fide guru, and then rendering devotional service. Then patience, courage, tolerance, forbearance, determination, and non-violence, all other things naturally develops into such a person. Finally, Krishna speaks about soul and super soul, the object of knowledge. He explains how super soul is omnipotent, whereas soul is localized. And the last question, or the last subject matter, who is the enjoyer? Who is Purusha? There is only one Purusha, the Supreme Lord. This chapter makes it very clear. There is Jiva is an energy of the Lord, which means we are a Prakriti. Therefore, we are always shelter seeker, not shelter giver. We are supposed to serve the Lord, not to exploit the gifts of the Lord. When a person understands this nature and acts accordingly, that is the time person begins to find happiness and joy in his life. Till the time is trying to usurp the position of Lord Shri Krishna, trying to act as a Purusha, he has to continue to take birth or be in the cycle of this samsara chakra, where he has to continue to face the results of his past misdeeds. Accordingly, he will have sometimes happiness and sometimes distress. With this, we come to the conclusion of this 13th, very important, yet a little difficult subject matter. But from tomorrow onwards, we're going to begin our journey on a very adventurous subject matter, which would be very easily understood. And I call it as a subject matter of human psychology. If anyone of you are interested to know about your fortune, to know about your future, if you understand chapter 14th content, you will be able to write your own future or forecast your own future. This is what the importance of this wisdom. So with this, we come to the conclusion of today's 13th chapter, Jnana Yoga. So I don't know, maybe some of you might have felt a little bored with this whole discussion on Jnana. So that's the whole thing. Jnana is not so much relishable. So thank you all for joining in for our this first session on the Gyan Yoga part, 13th chapter. I hope it made some sense. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much. And you have rightly said, like, as you have told, that try to read it by your own self. Yesterday I was reading it and I couldn't understand. And I have attended various sessions of yours also, but this Kshetra and Kshetragya, I always get lots of confusion. But today, I think this was third or fourth time I was able to get some sense. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. But yes, no doubt, chapter 14 is very, very interesting. So, Gita Mataji, do you have any question? No questions? Okay, Prabhuji, I'm not able to see much questions except Adi Lakshman so far. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, there is only one question from Adi Lakshman so far. I'm not able to see any other questions yet. Prabhuji, you need to unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have a doubt that uh, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead has created this material world as a jail, then why did he created the souls? If he have created this, if he hadn't created this souls, then what is the need of this? Yes or not? No.
Well, we were living happily at one point of time back at spiritual world. But when we decided to wander out to the material world, that is why we are here today. When a living entity somehow became disinterested and became more interested in the material energy of the Lord, that's the time we had to come down to this world. So, prison house is only 1/4 of the overall creation, this material world. 3/4 of the creation is a spiritual world. All right, Adi Lakshman?
Prabhuji, Sai Saraswat is having a basic doubt that is super soul and God, are they same or they are different? Like that.
So, we'll have our host answer this question.
Prabhuji.
Okay, let's ask the audience. Who would like to give the answer to this? Anyone?
Prabhuji, the question is that can you repeat the question, Mataji?
So, super soul and God, are they same or they are different? Paramatma and Bhagavan.
Bhagwan it's like Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. Like it is the sun, then the sunlight, and the fire of this. So it is like the three phases. We can see God first in the initial stage as Bhagwan, and then it is the second stage as Paramatma, and the complete form is Bhagwan. Paramatma resides within our heart, and Bhagwan is the Brahma Jyoti, and the super soul, or the Bhagwan is the super soul. So he's everywhere. All these are the secondary things, you can say.
So, in essence,
Secondary
yes.
manifestations.
Yeah, in essence, correct. In essence, yes. Paramatma is Bhagwan. In essence, Paramatma is also the
Yes.
Supreme Lord, but just another feature. All right, Sai Saswat? So that is what Mother Gita was trying to tell you. There are three different features of the Supreme Lord: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. So without going into the details of the technical terminologies of Sanskrit, but yes, in essence, yes, Paramatma is the Supreme Lord.
Prabhuji, there is one question from Rajita. Rajita, would you like to ask a question?
Prabhuji, what is Gneyam and Prakriti?
Say that again.
Gneyam and Prakriti. Difference between Gneyam and Prakriti.
Nayam refers to object of knowledge. What should we be studying? And Prakriti refers to the energies of the Lord. There are two energies that Krishna explains in 7.4 and 7.5 of Bhagavad Gita. One is the bhautic energy, material energy, which is inferior energy, and second is jiva, which is a superior energy. All right. So we are the energy, and the energetic is the Supreme Lord. So we are Prakriti, and energetic is Purusha. That's the meaning here. All right.
Yes, Prabhuji, we have another question from Akriti. Akriti, you can ask a question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I got query. We learned about what role does the soul play, but then what role does the super soul play? I mean, if Lord Krishna resides in us, then why does he make us do? Why doesn't he stop us from doing all the wrong deeds also?
No, I didn't get it. Miss,
Uh,
say that again.
Prabhuji, we learned how this what role does the soul play. So similarly, what role does the super soul play that resides within us? And secondly, if Lord Krishna via this super soul does reside in us, and why doesn't he stop us from doing the bad deeds?
Why doesn't he stop us from doing the bad things?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, first thing, If the super soul would not be there, then this world would not be in action. So because the presence of the super soul, the soul can stay in the body. So super soul is the binding factor for this whole creation. Everything happens because of the presence of the super soul. That's the first thing, a fundamental. Because otherwise, how does the Atma stays in the body? Atma doesn't have any power. How does it get covered? So the super soul is the binding factor that does everything. That's the reason 13th chapter 23rd verse says Upadrashta Anumanta Cha Bharta Vokta Maheshwara. It's a technical subject, but we'll elaborate in the mind management. But it's a brilliant subject where you understand it's actually super soul because of which everything happening. Even who is the controller of all these functionalities within our body? Who's that? Who's that? Of course, not the Jivatma. So it's a little subtle subject matter, but interesting. First thing, why doesn't Krishna interfere? Well, Krishna already have declared, Name dveshti asti na priya. No one is envious. I'm not envious of anyone, nor anyone is dear to me. You wanted to come to this world. I have given this world to you. You do whatever you want to do. And to govern the world, I have created a laws of karma. If you sow the seeds of good fruits, you get good fruits. If you sow the seeds of bad fruits, you get bad fruits. I am not part of it. But because I love you so much, I would have to be there with you to create facility for you to fulfill your desires. But because without presence of the Lord it's not possible. The Lord is always there accompanying the devotee or accompanying anyone, all the living entities. And based on the law of karma which he has created, according to that, his desires are either sanctioned or rejected. So you have to understand this is a place, it's a place of criminals, in other words, right? This is what Krishna says, Dukhalayam Shashvatam. Now, if you think what a saintly person is doing here, that is the whole point. Krishna is saying, what are you doing here? Are come out quickly. Why are you trying to make, in a temporary place, you're trying to make a permanent settlement? Doesn't make sense. Just like a boy or a girl at a beach collects the sand and tries to make a sand castle. Is it a permanent asset or temporary? Suddenly the wave comes and washes off the whole castle. Suddenly the wave of destruction in the form of Kala comes and washes away all our hopes and dreams of settlement into this world, isn't it? So through this message of Bhagavad Gita, Lord is trying to teach us and tell us, why are you trying to find a permanent settlement in a temporary place? Do not. So those who are saintly, those who are intelligent, they should understand this and work on creating their exit plan. I generally speak about exit plan. What's your exit plan? How are you planning to quit? Everyone is forced to quit. Like you make you make your study plan. You make your plan for future planning. Different plannings. So why don't we make an exit plan? Isn't it? No management school teach exit plan. We should start a course for exit planning management. We can call it EPM. Sounds interesting. EPM technology, exit planning management, where we teach people. So Bhagavad Gita is exit planning management course. It teaches you how to plan for your exit from this world. That's the whole thing. So that's the whole idea. Okay, so thank you all. I believe I have answered whatever few questions there were. So thank you all for joining in. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thanks a lot. So we have got Raman Grover Prabhuji question. Raman Grover Prabhuji, I'm noting it down. So maybe we will take it tomorrow, Prabhuji, or as you say.
Let's go ahead, take it, finish it off. We never know tomorrow is there or not.
So
Yes, boliye.
yes, Raman Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji, I have a question. If a person has a paucity of time, then what are the key devotional activities he or she should engage himself or herself during that limited period of time? For example, Prabhuji, there is a test match which goes for 5 days of cricket, right? So in the same way, 16 rounds of chanting, reading Bhagavad Gita daily, and other spiritual books, it's more like a test match for a person who has limited period of time. Right. So, is there a 2020 cricket concept where we can, adopt and perform those essential elements of bhakti so that at least we are on track every time?
Looks like you're a cricket fan, huh? Made a profound cricket analogy. I've got a homework verse for you. Give me a second. Let me just pull out the number. To turn your 2020 match into a cricket match, into a test match, I'll give you that verse. Wait a second. Somehow I forgot the number. Sixth chapter, verse number 17. Raman, you have Bhagavad Gita with you? Hare Krishna. Are you still online? So they can unmute, na? Allow participants to. Yeah, you can unmute. So, sixth chapter, verse number 17.
Okay, Prabhuji, I have noted it.
Yeah. Yukta hara viharasya yukta cheshta karmasu yukta sapnova bodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Lord Shri Krishna talks about regulating our life. So, Krishna knows people in Kali Yuga are extra smart. They will talk about 2020 cricket match. So, considering that Lord Shri Krishna already gave out this formula here, before they come up with this question, Krishna says, regulate your life. Regulate your eating, regulate your sleeping, regulate your recreation, regulate your work. When you regulate all those activities, you have plenty of activities to play test match with Krishna. All right? So regulate your eating. Don't spend too much time. Eat whatever 2 or 3 times in a day. Regulate your sleeping. 6 hours a day is more than enough.
Yes, probably for a working professional, and if a person is a family to look after also, and then other activities, so you can understand, and with kids studies and all. So you get obviously don't get too much time to spare for all the devotional activities. So I'm not looking for
Correct.
I'm not looking for shortcut. I'm only looking for the quality of time that I can spend on devotional activities.
Correct. So that's what I'm saying. Once you start practicing devotional life, you learn how to do other things more effectively and efficiently. That's a very important thing. Right now, all of us in the beginning always had this problem of no time. At one point in time, I was also a working professional. Professionals have their own schedules and all that. But over a period of time, when you somehow stick to your devotional practice, you'll see Krishna says in the 11th chapter, Kalos me, I am time, isn't it? And if you're trying to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, why wouldn't He create time in your life? Hayana.
Yes, Prabhu.
You do what Krishna says. Krishna will do everything for you to facilitate in your life.
Right, Prabhu.
Krishna says, I am the time. So give your worry time, waste time to Krishna. Use your work time for your occupation and your for family. So which times you have to give to Krishna? Worry time and waste time. Okay? So take a diary and write down how many hours, minutes in a day I waste in worry time and waste time.
Yes.
And with all these timings of my day, I'm gonna chant Hare Krishna and read whatever I have to read. And see, even in your work time, you'll become highly efficient. What takes you 10 hours to do your work, probably you're able to finish in 6 hours. I'll conclude with this. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, father of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was so efficient that the Britishers built a railway line to his home when he decided to give up his job. They said, no, we cannot let you give a job because you solve cases. The amount of time you take for solving cases, and a regular person takes 3. For example, you solve a case in half an hour to give a decision. A regular magistrate, somebody takes at least 3 days to resolve that case. You're so efficient. So Krishna Bhakta बहुत चतुर होता है. There is a saying. So you become extra chatur, you become everything. Everything happens. Don't worry. Krishna awards us everything.
Sure, Prabhuji. Prabhuji,
Everything is
chapter
possible.
number 6, verse 17, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I've noted.
All right.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
All right, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, our dear devotees, friends, aunties, uncles, kids, for joining today's session. And we look forward to have all of you for tomorrow's session, which is going to be very interesting. 3 modes of material nature. Hare Krishna.